So that it's actually showing this. Oh no, oh, sorry. Wow.
Sorry, people.
I'm usually not like this. All right. Now that we've made it this far. All right, so my name is Christine. Welcome to event Readiness, preparing your team to compete. So I'm Christine Attia. I'm a mentor on Team 125. I'm a alumni of a first team, Team 175 out of Enfield, Connecticut. And we're gonna be talking about how to get your team best prepared to compete. We're gonna be focusing on a lot on awards and how you can best prepare your team to kind of tell your story. But we're also gonna just look at some of the basics about getting ready for events. So before we get started, I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about myself. So like I said, I'm an alumni of an FRC team. I've mentored not only this team, but a few other teams, which has been a great experience. Volunteer-wise, I was a judge assistant in the Connecticut Regional and some of our district events in New England from 2008 and then until 2013. I am a district committee chair. I previously chaired the Southeast Mass District event and nicely handed that off to somebody else this year. Last year, I was the co-chair of the district championship and the Greater Boston District. This year, I'm only doing the Greater Boston District. I'm the social media manager for Any First, and I'm a contributor on First Updates Now, which is a great kind of web show that's hosted by people in the First community. So this is me. I am an art teacher. I am not an engineer, but I've been involved with First since 1998 when I was in the 3rd grade. So this is me. So we're gonna look at kind of like the year as a whole being on a team. So I had mentioned it in our previous presentation, but it's super important to use your year to the best of your abilities. So looking at the May to December timeframe, so that's the preseason or the postseason, depending on how you look at it. The best thing that you can do right now for your team is, if you're not a rookie, reflect on how your year went. You know, what was successful about your team's like outcome? How was your, you know, team management? What went well? What didn't go well? How can you improve upon it? Do some research. What did you see from other teams that you thought was really effective or that you think that you could implement to enhance your own team, whether it's technical things or organizationally? And how can you kind of pinpoint different things that you can utilize later on in the season? So we talked about resources like the Compass Alliance or figuring out who your regional director is and how you can get a hold of them. So this type of research is the best to do during this time frame because you have no real commitments as a team. You don't have to run off to a competition. Organize yourselves. So whether it's figuring out how to restructure your student groups or your mentors, or even something like your team information. So one thing that our students work on in the off season or preseason is organizing all of our team data, because it usually becomes a black hole of a Google Drive each year. So we try to organize, whether it's like photos of our team, team history information, or tools. We had to completely reorganize our tools because we had to pack them and move, and 22 years of stuff was a lot of organizing. So it's a really good time to go through and figure out what you don't need, what you do need, and how you can best organize it so you don't have to scramble for things. And update. So one thing that's good to do, especially for awards, is update any statistics about your team, any general information. And it's not just for the sake of awards, but when you're trying to create like a grant application or market your team to like your school committee or a sponsor, you want to make sure that your statistics about, you know, how many mentors do you have? How many students have gone into STEM fields? How many students have gotten scholarships? This is a great time to find that information and update it. It's really difficult to figure out how to do it during, you know, your build season or your competition season. So it's a great time to reach out to not only your current students and kind of update information that you have about them, but get a hold of your alumni and previous team members to get information about them and get it in a central location so you don't have to fish for it later on. And training. So it's obviously, it seems like a great time. You're all here, you're training yourselves, and you're probably going to use this information to help train other people. But it's a critical time to figure out where you struggled, in the season before, or what you want to expand upon for the upcoming season. It's very difficult to manage your build season and competition season in addition to kind of retraining or learning new things while that's going on. So this time frame is huge, and it's a really good opportunity to, in small amounts, kind of tackle these things. The way that we kind of do it on the Neutrons, and that I've done it on past teams, is we look at the team in a few different sections, and we're going to be looking at this whole presentation in kind of a few different aspects. So you look at the team as a whole. So your mentors, your students, your just general information. Then you're going to be looking at kind of the technical side of your team, your robot, the tools that are needed, the technical skills that are needed, what resources are needed for that, the support you need. And then looking at kind of the organization as a whole. So how your team is structured, how you're sustaining and growing. Those are kind of the aspects you want to look at when you're thinking about all these things, because every one of these tasks, reflecting, research, network, organize, update, and train, those can all be applied to every single aspect of your team, not just technical, not just non-tech, not just the management side of things. It definitely spans across the entire team. So after December passes, which is soon approaching, build season is a really critical time, obviously, to get your robot built and fabricated in time for the competition season. But it's also a really critical time for your students and mentors to document what you're doing. So it sounds a lot easier than it is, because we on the Neutrons always kind of find ourselves, week 3 of build season, we haven't really documented the process of how we've gotten to where we are. So having a dedicated group of students, or just making it a key priority to document what you're doing, will not only benefit your team when you're trying to tell your own story to people in the first community, but it'll help you in that post and preseason time when you're trying to, convince your school system that this is a really important program, or you're trying to recruit new sponsors or new mentors. Documenting your process and what the personal experience of your teammates is like is super important, but it's something that you can't really backtrack and do once the build season is passed. So keeping that in the forefront of everybody's mind when you're, building your robot or working on grant applications or award submissions, make sure that it's a priority for everybody. It is a huge undertaking for only certain people to do. And documenting isn't just photos or videos. It's, capturing screenshots of what you're programming. It's capturing, a picture of a doodle you did on a napkin to solve a problem. It's holding on to, your prototypes that you didn't end up moving forward with. It's basically artifacts that you can piece together to tell the story of how your team got from kickoff day to wherever you end up in, the end of February and then the end of April. So documentation is huge. It's a big undertaking that your entire team needs to be committed to. And if you are committed to, it will really benefit you in the long run. Reflecting. So that's something that you're going to be doing all season to be successful, or all year round, but kind of looking at what's going on, taking a step back, whether it's within a subgroup or just as a team in general. One thing we like to remind ourselves on the Neutrons is that this is a high school robotics competition. It is pretty easy to get sucked into winning and being too invested in things, but at the end of the day, it is important to reflect on the fact that not only is this for the students, but regardless of how things turn out, the fact that you've committed enough time and energy to doing something that isn't necessarily for you is a pretty great thing. Refining. So one thing that we do on the Neutrons a lot is constant refinement. So never just settling, making sure that you're working to the best of your abilities, and you're always looking for the correct way of doing something, or just the best that you can do. And a great way to do that is soliciting external advice. So we had talked about this in our previous presentation, but the most successful teams are the ones that reach out for help, whether it's for a grant application. It could be somebody in the first community, or having a student bring their grant proposal to an English teacher and have them look it over. But finding people that are experts that can help you. And like I said, it's important to get external help from people that aren't necessarily in the first community, because they may have a really different viewpoint on how to kind of help enhance whatever it is you're doing. And just work. It is super important to just make sure that you create a kind of timeline and set benchmarks for yourself. One thing that we do on our team is make sure that students create just overarching goals for whatever they're working on. Like, what do you want to get out of this? Okay, what do we need in order for you to get there? Let's set up a calendar. You know, you need to get this done on this date. We'll review it, and then, you know, you'll work between now and the next check-in point. So make sure that you develop a strategy or a way that best fits the needs of your team, your students and mentors, that will allow them to be successful and want to work. You certainly cannot force somebody to do all this work. It is a volunteer organization. So make sure that the work that you're doing is enjoyable and it's done in a way that everybody can kind of do without, I don't know, that's best for everybody, I guess. So competition season. This is, surprisingly, I find the competition season to be the less chaotic or least chaotic part of the year for our robotics team, at least, because I know exactly what's coming. I know exactly when I get to go home and eat dinner, and I know exactly what time I have to wake up. So it's important before you go to a competition, do your research. So whether that's reaching out to the planning committee of the event or you know, looking on the first website to make sure that you've seen all the rule updates, make sure you do your research so you're best prepared to go to the event and you're not scrambling to fix things or, you know, redo something. Reflect. So once your event is over, have a meeting with your team, or even at the end of the day. Typically what we like to do is check in with the students and ask, like, how did today go? Or even after a match, we ask the drive team, like, okay, how did that go? What do you think you need to do for the next match? Iterate. So constantly figure out, you know, how can we simplify this? If something's not working, don't just stick to it because you finished it. We're fortunate in the district model that we have more events coming up. You don't have just one event and you're done. So make sure that you're kind of problem solving and not just giving up. And repeat. So it's a giant circle. Once you get through your season, make sure that you're figuring out, okay, I'm exhausted, but what can we do in order to set ourselves up for success for the next season? So this is just the general overview of how we kind of tackle the year, or best practices in general, or mindsets to best utilize a full year as a team. So what to expect when you go to a competition. I know that we have one person who's a rookie this year. I will say that it is like Cirque du Soleil. You can't accurately describe what it looks and feels like when you're there, but it is it's quite the experience. So events are pretty exciting. The way that I look at it is there are the pits where your robot and some of your team is going to be located, the competition arena where the field is and all the action and exciting stuff is going on. And then you have the volunteers, the event committee, and the staff that are putting on this event for you. So in the pit, everybody is assigned, usually it's about an 8-foot by 8-foot square space that is, for every team, you'll get a nice table, you'll get a power source, and then you can do whatever you want with it as long as it's in the rules. There are guidelines for what you can and cannot have in the pit area. Obviously, you cannot have an angle grinder that's shooting sparks everywhere. That's not very safe. In the pit area, not only are there other teams, but there will be volunteer judges that will come around to talk to the students about the robot. There are safety advisors that will monitor to make sure that everything's going safe. And there are cuers who will come around with clipboards and tell you that you need to go get into the queue line and get ready for your match. So it is a pretty busy area of the competition, but it's a very exciting one. In the competition area, typically now in New England that we have district events, we are in high school gym areas. So the stands are usually pretty crowded. Everybody's sitting pretty close to each other. You'll see students that have like tablets or clipboards. They're taking notes on every match. There are people cheering. It's very loud. So make sure that you, you know, take a break every now and then and bring a, what are those, seat cushions. We've invested in some as a team now because we're sitting on bleachers for the most part. And then on the volunteer side, so the event committee are the people that volunteer to plan and then run the event. You'll typically, as a lead coach or mentor on the team, you'll get an email from these people giving you a great explanation of what to expect. If there's rules or restrictions on trailers that you're bringing, what time load-in will be. So they'll be the point of contact if you have any specific questions. They are great people that spend a lot of time and energy on making sure that you and your team have the best possible experience you can. There are key volunteers. So these are people that are responsible for overseeing different aspects of the competition. So you have the head referee. They're on the field making sure that all the other referees are enforcing the rules. You have the FTA, who is making sure the field works. I still don't understand what they do or how they do it, but we have great FTAs in New England that make sure that our events run. There are robot inspectors. So there's a lead robot inspector that has a group of inspectors that will check each robot to make sure that you are within the rules and guidelines that FIRST has set for the competition. That's one of the first things that you have to do at the competition, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then there's pit volunteers. There's pit admin. That's the person you go to when you have a bunch of questions about what's going on and you're not sure what to do. And they make announcements over a speaker. There's cuers, like I said, safety people, field volunteers. They'll reset the field. There's people that'll make sure that you're getting on and off the field safely. There are judges. We're going to talk more about them. They wear blue polos. They go around and they love hearing from the students about how their experience has been. And then there's FIRST staff. So people like Steve Kramer, our regional director, they're typically at these events. They're making sure that things are going smoothly. Teams have what they need. If they don't have what they need, that's his job to make sure they get it. And sometimes there are staff from headquarters that show up to events and see how, like our event is going and how teams are doing. So those are people to look out for. That's kind of the main components of the competition. So what to do when you get there? If you're the responsible adult that has to check your team in, that's the first thing you'll want to do. Typically, as a event chair, I made sure in the very beginning of my welcome email to let people know exactly what you need to check in. So you're going to need a printed team roster, consent and release forms that are emailed out to you. You need your robots pass inspection. We had talked about that before. And then if you are applying for any special submission-based awards, you need to make sure that you've signed up for an interview time. For your robot, you want to make sure that you have a good pit set up. You have the tools you need. You pass inspection. There is a special laptop you need to bring your radio to program it. These are all things, too, that they'll remind you of in your welcome email to your event. Usually on load-in night, you will go and connect to the field. So you'll bring your robot out to the field. You won't drive it around or anything, but the field staff want to make sure that your robot is connected to the field. And sometimes on a really good night, if we don't have a crazy field to set up, we have practice matches on load-in night, or you'll have them the next morning. So there is an opportunity to make sure that your robot is functioning, that your drivers get a little experience before the actual competition starts. Your team, so it's really important for the team to familiarize themselves with the facilities. So some teams go back to the same events every year, so you know exactly what to expect. But if it's a new venue, it's important to figure out, okay, like, where are the bathrooms? Where's the nearest exit? Which sounds silly, but at the same time, it is super important. Network with other teams. One of my favorite things about being a student on an FRC team was meeting other people that I typically I wouldn't have the opportunity to meet otherwise. So as antisocial as students can be, it is really important for them to go and network with other people and other teams. If you are doing an award or submitting for an award that requires an interview, it's always good to figure out where you're going to be interviewed so you don't have to worry about it later on. And at some events, we do have scholarship tables where students can go and interact with universities. So it's important to kind of make sure that, they're not just sitting in the stands, they're not just, bored or sitting on their phones, but get them up and about and, make the best of your time at the event. All right, so this is what we're really going to be looking at today is getting your team the most ready. So besides the basics of packing and all that stuff, what we want to do is make sure that you're able to best showcase a few different things about your team in general. So how to best showcase who you are as a team, who your sponsors are, how you have a really well-developed relationship with them, what's your team's mission, what have you done as a team, what do you care about, and what, like, your team history. So where did you start, where are you now? Your robot. So how to best showcase your robot. This one's really important because there's only one, you have one robot on your team. So if it's on the field and the judges come to your pit area, or if somebody comes and asks a question about it, you want to make sure that you can still explain and like best articulate things about your robot without it physically being there. And then the most important one that I think a lot of people forget about, your journey as a team. So everybody shows up with a robot, everybody shows up with team, like with other team members, and you know, you're wearing shirts and stuff, but it's really important to figure out how you can best showcase your team's journey from, you know, kickoff to where you are now, or from the previous year to where you are now. So those are all things that are really good to focus on in those different facets. But the biggest one is going to be figuring out how to best showcase your journey as a team, whether it's your robot or not your robot. Does anybody have any questions so far? No? Yeah. They've been kind of dwindling because we're in the district model. At the district championship, typically there is a much bigger showing. So sometimes, like, Steve will bring pamphlets about scholarship opportunities through FIRST, but at some events, we are lucky enough to have like a local university come in and set up a table. So if there's a specific university your students are interested in, you could email Steve about it, and he can definitely connect you with people, because he does have a long list of universities and contact information. But we've seen kind of like the need for it, or the interaction with students, kind of dwindling, I guess, or it's just hasn't been, I don't know, as prominent as it used to be in the regional model. But if your team really wants one or has questions about a specific university, Steve is definitely the person to ask about it. But district championship, we have a really good showing of Kramer. That's the regional director of Massachusetts. That's okay. All right. So what we're about to dive into. So we're going to be looking specifically at awards and how you can best prepare your team to showcase yourself to the judges and others at events. This is somewhat my area of expertise on the neutrons. This is what I mentor and contribute to. So we're going to be looking at why it's a good thing to win awards, or why it's okay to want to win something. The overview of awards, which can be pretty overwhelming. We're going to look at technical awards, team awards, and we're just going to kind of graze over submission-based awards, because I have a separate presentation to dive deep into those. And then I'm going to show you some resources, but all of those resources are actually housed on the Compass Alliance now. So we had talked about this before, but for your team to prepare for an event, besides packing and setting expectations, for your mentors and your students, it's important to communicate your goal going into an event. So whether it's, you know, just fielding your robot and leaving without it lighting on fire, that's one thing. But if your team had a successful year the previous year, or you've been working really hard at something, it's important to articulate to the entire team, like, okay, one thing that we're really going to work on this weekend is, you know, best explaining our outreach efforts from this past year. So that way, like, when the judges come around to the pits, regardless of who's there for students, they know that that's something that they need to explain to somebody, or to the judges. It's also important to set goals before you go into an event, so everybody's kind of on the same page. That way, if somebody doesn't think you're about to walk into the event and win it, when, you know, the programmers haven't really revealed that the robot isn't going to work because something's messed up. So getting on the same page as a team is super important, in setting goals. Defining roles and responsibilities is also huge, to make sure that everybody understands what their responsibility is and what they're going to be held accountable for. That's both students and mentors. And if you have any special needs or questions or concerns, it's really important to reach out to the event committee chair. So something that I personally, and I know a lot of other committee chairs aim to do, is make sure that you have a great experience. So in the past, my event was held at a venue that was not handicap accessible for the most part. And luckily, a team reached out to me beforehand to let me know that they had a student in a wheelchair. So I did my best to accommodate the needs, and I was able to plan ahead. Sometimes it is difficult when you come into an event and you have a need that needs to be fulfilled, for an event manager or planning committee person to immediately be able to satisfy it. But I will say that anybody that has prior knowledge of something that you need will make sure that they do the best to give you what you need. So during the event, make sure you rotate through roles that you can rotate through, whether it's mentors that are overseeing the pit area, or the students, or students that are scouting. Make sure that they're able to take breaks, network with other teams, and document your experience. So over in the resources section, there are 2 great resources. So there's a sample packing list that a team developed that is on the Compass Alliance website under the Run a Team and Competition section. And then What to Expect at Competition. So that was developed by the regional directors in the Chesapeake district, I believe. But it's a great overview of just the basics of like what to expect when you show up. It's good to kind of give to parents too that may be showing up and aren't really sure what's going on. So that's that. With the robot, it's basically the same thing, setting expectations, making sure that people aren't going to overstress themselves, whether it's on the field or talking to judges. And same thing, constant communication is super important. Network with other teams, document your experience. Any questions before we dive pretty deep into some award stuff? No? All right. So the benefits of winning awards. It is okay to want to win an award or to have a goal as a team of winning an award. So it's obviously a way to enhance your team's credibility, whether that's in your school, with your sponsors, or within the first community. It develops a reputation in all of those communities. It helps in the district model. It helps you gain points to move on from just being in the district to going to district championship, and eventually, hopefully, going to the championship event. If you go to the championship event, there are certain awards that will qualify you for next year's championship event. So they do have benefits to them. It'll help you plan a little further ahead for the upcoming season sometimes. It generates interest and awareness of your team and first. My robotics team in high school was far more successful than any other sports team at my high school. It definitely helped generate interest of people joining our team because we had more medals than anybody than, say, the football team, who didn't win a single game for most of my high school career. Within your community, it definitely is a way to engage your community and have them see what you're doing. So whether it's winning a competition or winning an award for the outreach that you're doing. And it engages potential sponsors, supporters, and team members. So like I said before, engages people in your school, local businesses, and potential mentors in your community. So internal team benefits. It's definitely a confidence booster within your own team. It helps you get organized. So like we had looked at before, in order to be successful and really set yourself up for success in winning awards, you do need to plan and put a lot of effort, or put effort and time into it. It develops self-awareness as a team. So it's always interesting to see teams that will win an award and they're super surprised and they're excited about it, but it kind of gets them to recognize something that they're good at and can help motivate them to do more with it in the future. It's something beyond the robot to work on. So even if you're looking to win a technical award for your robot, you do need to kind of develop different marketing materials. You need to train students, or students need to figure out how to best articulate things about their robot, or about how they went from kickoff to the robot that's in front of them. So it develops really good skills within certain subgroups and with each student on your team. And it definitely is inspirational as a team and develops self-confidence within your team as a whole and your students. All right, so this is my biggest pitch when I talk about awards. I know that there is a big mindset of, everybody's a winner in first, which is true, but at the same time, winning an award is evidence of your hard work paying off. Not only what you did, but how your team was able to articulate your achievements to others in an impactful way. When you go to an event, you are one of typically, 35 to 40 teams. The judges will be talking to, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 students on each of those teams. So if you win an award, you not only were successful with whatever you won it for, your students were incredibly successful in telling their story and your team's journey in a way that was impactful or memorable to those judges. We're going to talk about the judging process in a little bit. And as somebody that was a judge assistant, it was an interesting thing to see how the judges kind of communicate and decide who wins an award. But this is my big kind of statement when it comes to winning. I don't think it's the most important thing, but if you're able to prepare and kind of work towards that, you're putting in a lot more effort and you're developing skills. You're not just winning something. There's really no shortcut to winning an award at a first event. All right, so we're going to be looking at the judges. Who are they? What are they doing? Where are they? And why are they here? So the judges are the volunteers in the blue polos that will be walking around the pit area. They'll be by the fields, and they'll be checking out what is going on, and they want to talk to your students and find out what their experience was like on your team. So who they are volunteers. So they're recruited typically from local tech companies. They're people that have heard about FIRST or were previously involved with FIRST. They're there because they want to be and they're excited. Some of them have specific areas of expertise. If they're from a tech company, they could be really well versed in programming or mechanical engineering. They could be entrepreneurs that are looking at, your team's business plan or want to learn about how your team has become sustainable. They're typically all professionals. They're not just random people that are, pulled from other teams or off the street. They know what they're talking about, and it's good to kind of ask them who they are, what they do. They love to share things about themselves, that's for sure. So this is who volunteers are, or the judges are. So this is how they're broken up. So the key volunteer that oversees this group is the judge advisor. They don't get to put any input into the judging process. They're basically there to make sure that the judges understand each award criteria. They organize the judges, so they assign each judge like what they're going to be interviewing for, which teams they're going to be interviewing, and then they make sure that everything is kind of done on time. So at the end of the event, there's awards to actually hand out. So and then there's the judge assistant, who's basically like the kitten herder, as we called it, making sure that the judges come back to the judging room to deliberate. And then there are judges that are going to be looking at the technical awards. So they're going to be asking you questions about your robots. The match observers, they're the judges that sit next to the field and just take notes. They have the fun job where they get to just kind of sit there and watch all the matches. But the technical award judges talk a lot with the match observers. So if you tell, the technical judge, oh yeah, we scored 50 cubes in one match. The match observers will be able to pull up their data and say, that's not true. Or so they talk a lot and compare notes. So the team attribute award judges, they're going to be asking you about your team. What do you do outside of your, robot building? And then there's the chairman's award judges. They're specifically going to be interviewing teams that have submitted for the award and signed up for an interview time. And then the dean's list judges. So they're a separate set of judges that will be interviewing individual students that mentors have nominated. And we'll get more into what those are later. And then there's a separate group of judges, the safety judges. They are not part of the blue polo judging group. I think they were green polos. They are the people that kind of walk around and check out to see, who's being safe. And then they typically will go and interview teams and ask, what are your safety practices? And some teams have a, 5-inch binder about their safety practices, and, they've prepared for every potential disaster possible. So there are definitely some people that have a kind of set safety culture on their team, and luckily FIRST provides them an avenue to showcase that. So those are our judges and where they are. So we talked about this a little bit. So the team attribute judges are going to be in the pits talking to you, along with the technical award judges. Match observers are field side, and then chairman's and dean's list are going to be in specific rooms and typically only on the first day. So yeah, those are where you will find them. And final thought. So one thing that's important to remember is that when you're talking to a judge, they are talking to a lot of other people. So it's important that not only are you giving them factual information, but you're telling them it in a way that is engaging and meaningful. So they want to know what your experience was like on your team as a student. They don't want to really talk to mentors ever. So if you're a mentor that's in the pit by yourself and the robot's out on the field, you can let them know up there, you know, they're at the practice field or they're out at a match, like I'll let them know that you came by. If a student really doesn't know the answer, it is not okay for a mentor to jump in and like, you know, start talking to the judge instead of the student. They're there for the students and they're incredibly sucked in by their personal stories. They have a really tough job. So like I said, they're going to be talking to a lot of other teams, and typically they will get emotionally attached or wowed by many teams. So it is really difficult for them to pick one winner for each award. But when they get that, like, you know, wow factor or emotional attachment to a team, they will fight tooth and nail in the judge room to get people to hear the story that was told to them. So if there's a way that your students can, you know, best tell their experience on top of factual information, that resonates really deeply with them. It's okay to talk about your failures. That's one thing that I tell my students. We all go through them. It is not okay to lie about it. Typically they want to hear about, you know, what obstacles did you have to face with your robot or your team? How did you overcome them? And how are you planning to kind of deal with them in the future based on your experience? It's okay to also ask them questions or say that you're not sure and, you know, ask for help in answering it. It's super important to thank them because they do have a really tough job. And one thing that is super important that is oftentimes difficult for students to do is share kind of like the talking experience. Obviously, each student is well-versed in whatever they committed themselves to on the team. The judges don't expect every student to know every fact about both the robot and everything else about your team. So it's important to not only make sure that students are utilizing their team members, but share the kind of talking time. So yeah, those are like my big thoughts about the judges. Any questions about just judges in general? Yeah.
That happens in every competition?
Yep. Yeah, so at each district event that we attend as district teams, on the first day of competition, so not load-in night, but the next day, the judges will start coming around after opening ceremonies to talk to teams. They'll ask, like, they usually come in pairs, and typically what they do is, you know, one set of judges will ask, you know, tell us about your robot, and that's typically it, and they let the students kind of take the lead after that. Based on whatever they're talking about, you know, the judges will ask, you know, okay, how did you come up with this design or strategy? Like, what resources do you have at your build space? And it usually lasts anywhere from, you know, 5 minutes, or sometimes the judges will stick around for 15 minutes. But there'll be, I think it's one set of technical judges. There's a team attribute judge that'll come around and they'll ask, you know, tell me about your team. And they kind of want the same type of conversation, but team-based, as you would with the robot. And then there are other awards. So there's an entrepreneurship award, which I'll talk about in my submission-based awards presentation, but it's basically a business plan that you can create and bring to the competition and submit and have them read over. So they'll ask specific questions about that if you've developed a business plan. And then the safety judges typically come around throughout the event. So they'll be there on load-in night just to oversee that everything's safe, and then they'll interact with teams throughout the event. Yeah, so that happens at every event. After the event is over, there is an award ceremony, and on the first website, it gives a great breakdown of the point value for each award in a district system. So as a district team, at your first 2 events, you're going to be accumulating points by winning matches, winning awards. And if you're a rookie, you get, I think it's what, either 10 or 8 points. If you're a second-year team, you get a certain amount of points as well. And you're going to be ranked among the however many, what are we up to, like 300 teams in New England? Something. However many teams are in New England, you're going to be ranked within those teams after your 2 events, based on your wins, the awards that you get if you're a rookie or a second-year team. The top 62-ish teams will move on to the district championship. At the district championship, it's the same type of model as the district event. You're going to be accumulating points there with your wins, awards that you win, and then the top, I think it's 32-ish teams will move on to the World Championship. So it's a nice long season within the district model. The regional model that a lot of other teams are in is you show up to an event. If you win the event, you go to the championship. If you win one of the awards that will qualify you for the championship, you go to the championship. Everybody else is either going to another competition and hoping to do those things, or they're done for the season, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. If you're a rookie team, it's very difficult to kind of go toe-to-toe with the teams that are at the regional models. Yeah.
There are postseason events running
Yeah.
through the summer. And it's a good opportunity for those to try things that might not have been possible during the season.
Yep. So, but within the district model, you do accumulate points to advance. Once the season's over, though, everybody restarts. The only people that start off with points before even stepping into a competition are the rookies and the second-year teams. Yes. Well, and they're not points. They're just, punch your ticket to forever going to championship. All right. So award description. So First has developed a nice explanation of each award. It's a way for the judges to know what to look for when they're talking to teams. And it's also a way for students to figure out how they can best showcase their robot to the judges and other people. So in these descriptions, I've highlighted the most important key phrases and listed some best practices in order to get one of these awards. So we're going to start looking at the technical awards, and there are a lot of them. So industrial design. So celebrates form and function in an effectively designed machine that effectively addresses the game challenge. So for this award, the technical judges are looking for form and function. So what does your robot do and how does it do it? The quality award. This award is specifically for a team that is robust in concept and fabrication. How did you design your robot to best withstand the challenges of the competition? How did you design certain features to make sure that they're easily accessible to repair? And the match observers are really looking and giving input on this award because they're the ones that are seeing when the robots break or fall over, or which robots don't do that. So innovation and control is specifically looking at kind of how your robot is programmed or the unique application of control components. So this one is specifically looking at how your robot is controlled in the programming rather than the mechanical function of it. So creativity celebrates creativity and design, use of component or strategy. This award is really kind of open-ended. I've seen a team that won the creativity award because they had a very specific way of tracking, documenting, and then packing the tools that they use the most for each subgroup in their team. This was a long time ago, back at the Connecticut Regional, but a team had meticulously tracked what tools were used by which subgroups and then use that information to pack and then organize their team's pit space. So it was best. So people were able to best use kind of their space and the tools that they had. This could also be something like a unique material that you use. It could be a unique strategy that you've designed your robot to do within the game. But it's a really cool award because it's so open-ended. It's not an obvious, you could look at all the robots at the event and not know which robot would be winning this award, or what team would be winning this award. Excellence in engineering is probably one of the like cream of the crop technical awards. It celebrates a team that has an elegant and advantageous machine feature. So with this specific award, you not only have to have a machine feature that works, but you have to kind of pitch it in a way that is memorable and best describes and showcases the feature of your robot. And the judges award. So this can either be a technical award or a team award, but it is completely up to the judges. It's like a big blank Scrabble tile that they get to choose, you know, what team deserves it. So the judges award typically goes to a team that was brought up over and over again in conversation, but didn't quite make the cut for winning any of these previous awards or any of the team attribute awards that we're going to be looking at. It's a pretty great award. I like that there's, you know, an open-ended one that they get to choose. All right, so pit interviews. Like I said before, oh, so, yeah.
I know that some of them will not necessarily work on those for challenge or some kind of presentation and other stuff. For those here, do you need is this one or is more part of the company as someone will?
So everybody has the opportunity to be eligible for these awards. You do not have to submit any prior submission or paperwork or anything. It is purely based on interaction with the students and the team and what is observed at the competition. So basically what you're bringing and how you are pitching it to the judges. And in this next slide, we'll talk about how you can kind of use your interview time and any other time that you're going to be at the competition to best showcase. So like I've talked about before, telling your team story is the most important part of engaging with the judges and making your team memorable. So documentation is a huge part of this. What was it like for your team before kickoff even started? You know, what previous knowledge or experience did your mentors have, your students have? That's a great way to kind of introduce yourself to the judges. Say, hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm a junior at this high school. You know, our team has been around for a while. This is my X year on the team. And, you know, this is what I worked on. And then you kind of hop in. So talking about not only your personal previous experience, but your team's overall previous experience. Talking about how you and your team broke down the game. So we all get to see the game at the same time. We all have the 6 weeks to make our robots and then show up to our first competition. So talk about how your team does that, because when a judge shows up to your pit, they only know what they see. They know your team number, they know your team name, they're looking at your robot and your students, but beyond that, they really have no prior knowledge of what your experience was like, you know, during kickoff or what strategies you used in order to best break down the game to decide on what your robot was going to do. It's completely different for every team. So make sure that you talk about that. What was your role during the season? What's your role now? You can talk about why you joined. That's always an interesting story for the judges to hear. And what your experience is like and what it makes you want to do either next year or down the line in your career. It's good to talk about your sponsor relationships, your mentors, so how they kind of support and contribute to your team, resources your sponsors may provide that you wouldn't have an opportunity to use otherwise. Like for us, it's 3D printing. One of our sponsors has really supported us and allowed us to use their 3D printer. And personal points. So any unusual material, your favorite part of the robot. That's always a good one to talk about, whether it's something that you personally worked on or it's something that you just really like about your robot. Failures and challenges. So what was the most challenging part of your design process or your strategy process? And how did you overcome it? And then beyond the basic facts and face value of things about your robot. So yes, you want to talk about, okay, we have, you know, a 6-sim drivetrain, or we have, you know, mechanism wheels or whatever. But beyond that, why did you choose those? You know, what is interesting and engaging about it? It's important to look beyond the face value of things. Honestly, I don't think judges care too much about what motors you used unless you have a reason why you use them. Did you do research to figure out which, you know, would draw the least amount of power from your battery? Or did you do an off-season project where you learned how to make this drivetrain so it was a lot quicker to do during the build season? Like, figure out what is interesting and what would matter beyond like what they can look at and already know. So this is an example of one of our robot handouts from this past year. So in addition to having the physical robot there, hopefully, if it's not out at a match, we typically take a rendering of our CAD. Our lead CAD student last year made this, like, whatever it is, a rendering of our robot. It looks pretty real. But even something like a photo is really great to have. And then point out, like, the basic facts. These are things you don't want to waste your time talking about unless there's a really specific reason for it. Like, this is great for the judges to walk away with or be able to take a photo of if you have a poster of it, but this doesn't matter when you are speaking to them. But this is a great handout, not only for competitions, but later on down the road when you're doing a demo and, you know, there's a parent that's like, oh my gosh, the robot's so cool. Like, I want to show my coworkers. Give them that handout. So this is an example of one side of our technical handout from last year. It's also a great way for students who may not have been the most deeply involved with the robot side of things to have the basic knowledge of each component of your robot. Typically, what we talk about on our team is if somebody's new to talking to judges or just presenting things about the robot, you want to do it like a doctor's checkup. You're either going to start from the top and work your way down or work from the drivetrain and explain your way up. That way you're not just like ping-ponging all over the place. And then on the back this year, we decided instead of more, you know, boring facts and information, we wanted to give a visual to the judges of each student that led each subcomponent. That was something that the students chose to do because what we realized is, okay, well, you know, he may have been in the pit to talk to the judges, but, you know, his kind of co-lead of that project wasn't. So we want to make sure that not only do they get credit, but it's a way for the judges to take that back to the room and say like, oh yeah, I spoke to this kid and he was so enthusiastic and had these, you know, great stories to tell. Now, if another judge, you know, sees that handout and hears that story and they're walking around the competition and they see him, they can go and talk to him because they, you know, have that memory or, you know, that evidence, I guess. And the student who did all the CAD work kind of took each subcomponent of the robot out of his CAD stuff and made sure that they were individually kind of showcased. That way, if the robot wasn't in the pit or if the judges wanted to talk about a specific component that they saw up close, but, you know, a general photo wouldn't be able to show, like these are nice kind of detailed descriptive photos of them. So that's the back of our handout and the other side was the front. I was excited that the students put their faces on there. And they are, for the most part, all smiling, which is pretty difficult to have high school students do that. Any questions so far about anything? There's no cookie cutter way or right way to best showcase your robot. It's really up to you. Investing time into handouts is a lot, but it is worth it for a lot of different reasons. And it gives students the skills to develop documentation skills that they otherwise wouldn't have because they're so deeply involved with, you know, creating the robot itself, but figuring out a way to best showcase it on paper or on a poster is a difficult task to do, but it is really important. It's something that we as a team are still trying to figure out. But it's always a fun process to see what is successful or, you know, what isn't so successful. So, yeah.
So some of the awards I've seen are not technical ones, they're going on in some of those.
Yep, the Team Attribute Awards.
So that's like a costume.
Yeah. Yep. So this is the other non-robot side of the award description. So we call this the non-tech side on the neutrons, and we're going to go over some of those descriptions. So Team Spirit. People think this is the award for the team that screams the loudest. It is actually more so based on the, you know, enthusiastic, spirited partnerships that teams develop within their communities and to showcase first. The Imagery Award. So that is a team that is the most aesthetically attractive between the robot, their cart, their pit. Just like you show up to the event and from like across the room, you see a certain color or a certain thing and you know exactly what team it is. It's a team that's best branding themselves from head to toe, robot to I don't know, handouts. The Engineering Inspiration Award. This is a really critical award, and it's celebrating the outstanding success in advancing respect and appreciation for engineering within your school and community. So this award is one of those special awards that will qualify just your team, not your robot, for the district championship. So even if you don't accumulate enough points at the end of the season to, I don't know, get to a district championship with your robot, your team will still be able to present to judges about your team's outreach efforts in connecting to your schools and communities. Typically, though, the teams that are winning this award are very well-rounded and do qualify for the district championship with their robot. But Engineering Inspiration is a really big award, and it's kind of a really good sign that you're on your way to kind of like the next step, which would be the Chairman's Award, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The Safety Award. So we talked about how there's a separate panel of judges for safety. So now that we're in the district model, typically the way that it works is at an event, a team can only win one judged award. However, the Safety Award is the only award that can be stacked like on top of winning another award. So if you won, say, I don't know, Engineering Excellence, you can still be in the running for safety. It does not work any other way though. Like if you win Engineering Excellence, you're not going to win the Imagery Award. Because the Safety Award is judged by a separate panel of judges, you are eligible for both the Safety Award and any other award. Gracious Professionalism. So this celebrates outstanding demonstration of the core values of FIRST on and off the playing field. It was previously judged by the judges, but teams were able to submit feedback forms to the judges about teams that have been helping them. They're not doing that this year. It's going to be just judged by conversations that judges will have with students about their team and other teams. And then, like I said before, the Judges Award is that TBD award that the judges get to choose. It could be a team attribute-based award, or it could be technical-based. But the Judges Award typically goes to a team that has really resonated with the judges in a certain way because of the great interview that they had with the students, or because of the story that they had heard from a team. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. So for the pit interviews, very similarly to when you're talking about your robot, the judges don't really know anything about your team or your experience when they come to your pit. So it's important to not only introduce yourself and explain, what your role on the team was, but you want to make sure to best talk about what your team is passionate about. What are your team's goals besides surviving the season and building a robot that does really well? What has that made you personally want to do with your life or your spare time because of the impact that it's had on not only you, but other people? Where did your ideas start as a team, and how have they grown, based on your team's experiences or ideas you've gotten from other teams or experiences you've had with your sponsors or mentors or a need in your community? And basically, like we talked about before, your journey this season and previous seasons and how you've overcome hardships or developed relationships with, other sponsors, other teams, and what your plans are to do in the future. So not only what you've done, but based on what you've done and how it's going, where you'd like to go with it is also a great thing to talk about. Any personal points that you can add to it, not your favorite part of the robot, but your favorite part of your experience with your team, or I remember when I was in high school, one thing I talked about in the pit, because I was on the drive team, but I didn't know nearly as much technical knowledge, or I wasn't able to articulate it as well as other people on my team. I did talk about, a personal experience I had doing a demo at a local elementary school, and how, that inspired me to be a teacher. And that part of that story was actually in the award script that they read during the award ceremony. It was like, oh, cool. They remembered and they thought that was cool. So it's good to integrate something like that where it's very personal, or it's very specific to your team and somebody on your team. So this is our team attribute handout from this year. We wanted to make basically a visually engaging resume about our team. And we had a lot of information that we wanted to share. And we decided this year we were packing it all in. We didn't need photos or anything. We wanted to make sure that the judges had a really good understanding of everything we've worked on, everything that matters to us. And we wanted to do it in a way that was not a binder and was visually engaging. So we use a website called canva.com, which is free. You can also upgrade to like different account levels. But we started with a template that was similar to this and then kind of tweaked it so we could jam everything in. So this was one side of our one-page resume. We wanted to make sure it fit on an 8.5 by 11 so we could photocopy it if for some reason like we forgot to bring them at a competition, which had happened. We had to go to Staples when we were in South Carolina because we'd finished this like the night before our competition. But we also wanted to make sure that it was useful enough that we could use it outside of the competition, because there were too many times where our handouts were like theme specific or first specific, and it wasn't, and we didn't have the energy or time to redo it for like a demo or recruiting sponsors. So this was our way of engaging with like judges and then whoever else we needed to explain to our team about. So we have, you know, where we started, where we are now, who our sponsors are, seminars that we host, outreach events, where you can find us on social media and kind of the data and statistics about that, partnerships within our community, any, you know, outstanding media coverage. This was a big one that the students wanted to showcase, was like the diversity of our team. How could we do that in a way that wasn't too like personal, but definitely showed like the variety of students that we have on our team. And then how can we best showcase information about both our students and mentors, because we thought that both was an important kind of aspect to show. So this was a lot of work. This is evidence of working in the off season to collect data. We have to reorganize all of our data because I don't know where it ended up after the season, but this was after a year's worth of kind of going through the process of reflecting, planning, all that stuff. And then I don't remember what was on the backside of that. I think that was, oh, it was the chairman's definition on the back. All right, any questions so far about non-technical things? No? Okay. So with like non-technical handouts, obviously that was a lot of words and numbers and very little to no pictures. So that was a choice that we had made because we felt as though the photos took up too much space. However, there are teams that have binders. They have slideshows that are playing, you know, on computers. We don't have the ability or the money or the resources to have like nice slideshows. Sometimes we can order a banner, but we wanted to make sure that we could do something that was really information based. But there are teams that do it differently. There's photos, binders. A lot of people do like newspaper clippings and like collages. So whatever works best for your team to best showcase what you're doing. There's no wrong way of doing it. All right, and submission-based awards, I'm just gonna graze over this because I'll be diving deep into this later on. I have no concept of what time it is. Okay, I do have to finish in a minute. So these are our submission-based awards. The Woody Flowers Award is an award where the students get to nominate a mentor and kind of showcase the things that make them amazing. What they're looking for, though, within this submission is how this mentor leads, inspires, empowers, and they do that using excellent communication skills. So regardless of if that mentor fits into those like guidelines or not, it is a great opportunity for students to recognize and show appreciation for a mentor on their team. This is a submission-based award, so it has to be submitted online. Only the students can do it. Mentors will assign, I think it's 2 students in STEMs that will be the award submitters. So you want to make sure that you do that so they can submit their awards. Dean's List, it's basically the opposite. Mentors get to choose 2 students. They cannot be seniors. I think it's sophomores or juniors. They nominate 2 students that kind of showcase leadership skills and passion for the first ideals and goals. There is a character limit on the essay that you write about them. It's also a great like letter of recommendation or support document for them to put in their college resumes or any scholarship applications that they're going to be applying for. The Entrepreneurship Award was previously submitted online. This year it has changed. So this is the business plan that your team can develop and talk to the judges about. This year, I believe, I'm going to talk more about this in my other presentation, but it's different and it's more useful. In previous years, you had to fill out all these questions online for the submission that may not have been super relevant to an actual business plan that you could use as a team. So this year, FIRST has restructured the Entrepreneurship Award to be something that will be useful outside of competition. So you'll be creating a physical business plan that I believe is up to 3 pages, can be front and back. There's no limit on font size or anything, but you're going to turn that in at the competition to the judges when they ask about it. And they'll review it, which I think is better than the previous one, because working on, Woody Flowers and then the Chairman's Award or anything else, there's not a lot of time for it. The Chairman's Award is the most prestigious award in FIRST. It is a huge undertaking to tackle as a team, but it is worth it for a lot of different reasons. We'll talk about that more in my next presentation. Any questions? This is pretty much the end of my presentation. Nothing? Awesome. Well, best of luck this season. I cannot recommend enough the Compass Lines. I have some general resources here, but the awards pathway, if you want to know more about awards, or if you have students that are interested in submitting for awards and you don't have a mentor that can really oversee the group, the awards pathway is the way to go. There are individual awards resources on the Compass Lines website, but the awards pathway is a 15-page document that will literally give you step-by-step guidance for every award with real-life team examples inside of it. So this is the place to go if you want to up your awards game this year. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You are welcome. How do I turn that on?